All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be looking at communication,
Yeah.
but not the kind you might be thinking of when you first hear that word.
Right.
We're not going to be giving you tips on how to, be a better public speaker or win friends or influence people.
Mm-hmm.
We're going a little bit deeper than that.
Exactly.
We're looking at the kind of communication that creates real impact. And to help us out today, we've got two kind of seemingly unrelated sources at first.
Okay.
The first is a quote from Andrew Grove,
Oh, wow.
former CEO of Intel.
Okay.
And then the second is we're going to be diving into the story of Nehemiah from the Bible.
Interesting.
And honestly, when I first saw these two sources together, I was like, what could a business leader and, an ancient biblical figure possibly have in common when it comes to communication?
Right.
But trust me, the connection is pretty mind-blowing.
I'm intrigued.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's jump right in. So this idea of communication creating real impact, I think, is perfectly summed up
Yeah.
in this quote from Andrew Grove,
Okay.
who is, really a giant in the tech world.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said, "How well we communicate is determined not by how well we say things, but by how well we are understood."
That's good.
So it's not just about delivering a message, eloquently or using big words or whatever.
Right.
It's about making sure that the person on the other end actually gets it.
Yeah, they actually receive it in a meaningful way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the story of Nehemiah comes in.
Okay.
So for those who might not be familiar,
Yeah.
Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the Persian king Artaxerxes.
Wow. So a pretty important position.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
But he was also a man of deep faith
Okay.
and had a strong connection to his ancestral home in Jerusalem.
I see.
And so this is where things get interesting.
Okay.
A traveler arrives from Jerusalem named Hanani
Okay.
and tells Nehemiah about the state of the city. The walls are broken down. The gates have been burned. The people are just living in fear and despair.
Oh, wow.
So you've got Nehemiah, this man of power and influence, hearing this news.
Right.
And the text doesn't just say that he's sad. It says he's overwhelmed with grief
Really?
to the point that he weeps and mourns for days.
Wow.
So clearly, Hanani didn't just deliver a bland report here.
Yeah.
He communicated this in a way that had serious emotional force behind it.
Exactly. And I think that's where we see the real power of communication in action, because Hanani really understood his audience.
Yeah.
He knew Nehemiah's deep love for his people, his faith. And so I imagine he used really vivid imagery, maybe even emotional appeals, really painting a picture of the suffering in Jerusalem
Right.
in a way that would resonate with Nehemiah.
Absolutely. And it makes total sense why, hearing this news,
Yeah.
Nehemiah didn't just think, oh, that's sad. It touched his heart. It, made him feel empathy. And that's ultimately what fuels his decision to leave his comfortable life.
Wow.
And go on this dangerous mission to rebuild the walls of the city.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And so I think this brings us to another crucial element of, that is impactful communication.
What's that?
And that's this idea of sparking action.
Oh, interesting.
The text describes this overwhelming sense of responsibility that Nehemiah feels.
Okay.
It calls it his burden to act.
Yeah, it's like when you see a problem
Right.
that you just can't ignore and you feel this compulsion to do something about it.
I've definitely felt that before, but I never really connected it to, the communication. So I guess to connect this back to Andrew Grove's quote, are we saying that the key to powerful communication is triggering that kind of emotional response and that burden in the receiver?
Absolutely. It's about crafting a message that resonates so deeply with your audience that it moves them beyond just understanding to action.
Wow.
And I think this applies to so much more than just, ancient history. Or religious context, think about it. Like
Yeah.
if you're trying to rally your team at work to meet a tight deadline, or you're trying to, convince your family to adopt a more sustainable lifestyle.
Or even just like having a heart-to-heart with a friend who's going through a rough time.
Yeah, exactly. In all of those cases, the goal isn't just to convey information. It's to inspire action, to motivate,
Right.
to connect on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And that's where understanding your audience, their values, their motivations, that becomes absolutely essential.
This has been a real eye-opener for me. I think we often get so caught up in the mechanics of communication,
Yeah.
like the words we choose or, the way we're presenting ourselves.
Yeah, how we sound.
Exactly. That we forget about the emotional impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And we lose sight of the bigger picture.
So as listeners, what can we take away from this conversation?
Well, I would encourage you to think about a time when you were deeply moved by a message. Maybe it was a story
Yeah.
or a piece of information. What was it about that communication that made it so effective?
Yeah.
How can you apply those same principles to become a more impactful communicator yourself?
That's great.
Because remember, the power of communication lies not in how well you speak,
Right.
but in how well you're understood and how effectively you can move your audience to action.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Yes, great.
That was really insightful, and I hope you'll learn something new.
Likewise.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.